This is Geekazine's special coverage of Ford, Forward with Ford, Futuring and Trend Conference in Dearborn, Michigan. Geekazine is a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network over at techpodcast.com. If it's tech, then it's here.
Session of the day. It's great to have you here. I'm Alan Howell with Ford Communications, and we are here in the Emerging Technology session. So I think we have a really good action-packed and content-filled session for you. And we're going to be in here for around 25 minutes and take you through a great panel discussion with some experts. And then we'll take you out into the atrium, and we have a wide variety of demonstrations for you, hands-on demonstrations to show you what's available now and a peek into the future. And we'll have a lot of key spokespeople here that can answer questions, plenty of time to shoot photos and videos. So please make sure you get what you need, and if not, we will have the experts also available throughout the day and even tomorrow if you want more content. So grab me or any of the other Ford representatives if you have any specific requests. So with that, I want to get us started with a little bit of outsider perspective. And we have Paul Hochman with us, who is a technology journalist, a well-known technology journalist and expert. And he's going to provide a little bit of perspective on what's happening outside of the auto industry and how we are leveraging it. And then brings up some of the Ford experts in a panel discussion. So with that, Paul?
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for coming so early. As Alan mentioned, I'm Paul Hochman. I've been the Gear and Technology editor for the Today Show. I've been a writer for a bunch of different magazines covering various kinds of technology. I've covered consumer electronics a lot, but also I've covered a bunch of Olympic Games and the technology that helps the athletes go faster. So I've looked at everything from cell phones to swimsuits, literally. Anybody who saw the Olympics in Beijing probably heard about that laser racer swimsuit. I was actually talking to one of the panelists, Jim Wiskowski, who we meet in a few minutes, last night. And the thing that was interesting was that we talked about how technology actually in some ways is, well, the Italian coach of the swimmers called the Speedo suit technological doping. He was complaining because the suit was, he viewed it as a cheating element, or a tool that was helping these athletes cheat. And I thought about it for a second, and I said, of course not, everybody could get access to it. But what was interesting was that Jim asked me a question. He said, is this technology actually making up for the weakness of the user? And the reason I'm talking about this is because in a second we'll get to what Alan Mullally talked about last night, which was the addition of one pillar to Ford's original three, which were efficiency and quality and, of course, and safety, but the fourth being connectivity. We're going to talk about that today. But this technology, is this technology making up for a weakness in the human condition? And I said, no, of course not. It's just making the athlete go faster. But then I thought about it, and I talked to the German engineers directly who were responsible for the Speedo laser racer swimsuit, and they said that, and this is what they said, and I'm going to use the accent they used. They were very proud of it, actually. They said, no, we are just squeezing them into a shape of a torpedo. Hydrodynamics. Okay. And I said, well, that's really interesting, but it's really true. Instead of just making the athlete faster by creating a surface that let them slip through the water, it actually literally changed the shape of the athlete. Katie Hoff, who was one of the Olympians who ended up winning a bunch of medals in a Speedo suit, told me that it took her 20 minutes to get into her swimsuit. Now, anybody familiar with the Mark Spitz era, where it probably took him 20 milliseconds to get into that thing? I don't even want to image it. Sorry I even brought that up. But the fact is that the technology had changed to not only help the athlete, or in this case the customer, I suppose, perform better, but it also made the customer jump through a lot of hoops. So let's get now right to the technology. I'm going to give you guys a brief, within this 5 minutes that I have, I'm going to give you a brief history of technology, starting in April of 2008, which is the introduction of this gorgeous, ugly little thing called the iPhone. Now, it's hard to imagine, to me anyway, it's hard to get my mind around sometimes the fact that the iPhone was only introduced 3 years ago, but it's totally changed the landscape of technology. And I think, and we're going to talk about the series of steps that technology has gone through the next minute or two, but really it started not with anything other than it was more human in its interaction with the customer, meaning touch. We're all familiar now with touch, I think many of us are anyway, and touch is pretty much worked its way into almost any possible technology. Some technologies that don't even need it, okay? But in this case, you would literally touch it. I have a 2.5-year-old son named Oscar, and Oscar has figured out a way not only to completely scramble everything in my iPhone, but also to get access to all the pictures. He knows if he does this, the pictures keep moving to the next picture. And he knows that there's a little triangle. I swear, if there's a little triangle in the middle of the picture, it's a video. And he'll tap on the triangle and he'll start the video. He also knows how to change my password by mistake. But anyway, that's another subject. Bottom line is, that's intuitive, yes. But touch was the beginning of this big change, this paradigm shift in technology, where we went from keyboards to something that was more human. Nobody, when they want to talk to somebody, goes like, hi. They'll say, hey. Okay, that's a more human action. Now, the next thing, yeah, exactly. Now, the next thing, as far as I'm concerned, is voice. In other words, touch was the beginning of things. Voice is the new touch, I'm fond of saying now. And voice is the way that I would say is even more human in its ability to make us feel comfortable with technology that's very complicated and powerful. And then moving forward, again, this is an ultra-compact history, but moving forward, I think what will be the next voice, really, will be basically gesture recognition. You've heard of Kinect, Microsoft Kinect. It's a game system. It actually recognizes not only gestures, but in some cases faces and so forth. Now, the idea of all this, what does this have to do with the car? Why is this little ultra-compact history, what does it have to do with the car? I'm now going to give you a 30-second biology lesson. Here we go. I had an animal behavior teacher once who told me something I'll never forget, and that is that the more specialized an animal is, the closer it is to extinction. That the more likely that that animal is to only exist and live in a very narrow world. It may be perfected, I should say, or perfect, or strong in that narrow world, but the second that that narrow world changes, the animal's in big trouble. It can't adapt. It's specialized for something very specific. So let's talk about technology in a car for a second. Well, again, the 3 pillars originally, quality, safety, and economy. There's a fuel economy and efficiency. That's fine. Now connectivity, says Mr. Al-Malali, the president and CEO of Ford, that's how they're going to compete. They, Ford, I'm not with Ford, I'm a journalist. That's how Ford is going to compete with all the other folks out there? Well, it had better be an open system, not a closed one. I'm going to introduce our 3 guests in just a second, but the system that you're going to be dealing with in a Ford that's competing with GM and Audi and everybody else is an open system. What do I mean by that? That means that unlike the iPhone, and this is why, by the way, in my humble opinion, you heard it here last, Apple's in big trouble. Why? They've got giant market share. I think they have the largest market cap of any company on the New York Stock Exchange, or close. Why are they in trouble? They're sitting on piles of cash because they have a closed system. In biology, in politics, in technology, a closed system always loses. It can't adapt. The app that sits on this iPhone cannot work on a Motorola phone, cannot work on an HTC phone, cannot work on a Samsung phone, cannot work on an LG phone. It only works in the Apple ecosystem. Ecosystem, biology. It's a closed system. It is one built on hubris, in my opinion, which is Mr. Jobs, by the way, has done an unbelievable, brilliant job of creating something which has a great user interface, but it's a closed system. Ford has not embraced that technology or that approach. Unlike GM, you've heard of them, they have the OnStar system, which is very well known, well marketed. It is a cell phone, in essence, bolted into a car. That cell phone, I don't know about you, but this cell phone is no longer my favorite cell phone, right? It's something else. Well, too bad if I bought a GM car and I had that cell phone bolted into the vehicle. That's it. With Ford, they have built a platform, a software platform, to receive the technologies, whatever they are, that are brought into the car. It is an open system. I will leave it to our experts, who I'd like to bring up now, if you would. First, Julius Marchwiki. I'm going to let him give his title because it's much more impressive than I could ever, but Apps Are Us with Mr. Marchwiki.
Hey, good morning everyone. My name is Julius Marchwiki. I'm the product manager of Sync AppLink, and that is a brought-in strategy that brings in the apps that reside on your smartphone into the car.
Thank you. And then, of course, Mr. Wiskowski, if you could introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Jim Wiskowski. I'm a director and Henry Ford Technical Fellow here in Research and Advance for Electrical and Electronic Systems.
What that means is he is the chief geek. Okay, and then Bridget Richardson, please.
Well, I'm a female panelist, I think. Bridget Richardson, work on voice control technology. I'm an engineer. Nice to meet you.
So, We're going to talk just for the next few minutes about the individual areas of expertise these guys have, as well as, obviously, how this impacts the rest of the car industry and certainly Ford itself. So if I could start first with Julius.
Absolutely.
Your world is actually a brought-in world in many ways. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So one of the amazing things that Paul mentioned about systems like the iPhone and now newer smartphones is that their development cycles are extremely short. It takes 6 months from design on paper to bringing a cell phone to market. And then with apps on top of that cell phone, you all of a sudden have a system that can change constantly. Well, our vehicle manufacturing times are 3 to 4 years. And so if we wanted to put, for example, Facebook inside of the car, let's put a social network inside of the car. 4 years ago, we might have said, you know what, MySpace looks like. They're the top #1 most users, right? And we would have gone, and 4 years later, we would have learned that, you know, MySpace essentially doesn't exist as a social network and has been supplanted by Facebook. So what we've done here at Ford is, with our Sync and My Ford Touch systems, we've been able to create a set of APIs that lets a brought-in device, a cell phone, act on the vehicle.
I'm going to interrupt. An API is?
It's a programming interface which allows for a mobile phone or a smartphone to talk to the vehicle and actually do things like write to the display or recognize voice commands, which Bridget will get to in a second. But we're really creating kind of an open system that you mentioned, Paul, to bring new capability as quickly as we can deliver it to a mobile phone.
Okay, and I want to talk to Jim for a second about complexity. Now, complexity is the background. We're going to get back to Julius, the import. By the way, I'm going to mention it right now, the word safety, the word distraction, and so forth. I mean, this is part and parcel of this challenge, is bringing all this stuff in that people already did bring into a car, and now dealing with it, all these different systems dealing with it seamlessly, but the complexity under the system.
Well, the objective is to create, and Julius used the word quite a bit, so did Paul, on a platform. What we want to do is have a platform that is expandable, really shields the customer from the complexity as much as possible, but gives all that capability, gives a lot of choices to customers. And so the platform has to be flexible. It has to allow you to add things and change things over time as things change and adapt to technology and so on. And really adjust the complexity, really adjust the interface to what customers feel comfortable with.
Let me ask you
That's
a question.
the challenge.
And why don't you bring, for example, why isn't there a 12 trillion terabyte hard drive in every Ford?
Well, I think the bottom line is we've got to provide good value for customers as well.
Okay.
Too. And so the compromise is, how do we bring something that's very affordable? In fact, we have a strategy in Ford we call democratization of technology, which is if it's good technology, it's really valuable to customers. They can really use it to benefit and have good experiences in the vehicle. We want to make it affordable to all customers. And so it isn't about bringing, 200 gigabytes into the car or whatever. It's about bringing something that's very affordable and can deliver great value to customers and great experiences as well.
Excellent. And one last question about that large hard drive. I mean, a lot of people would say, well, look, if you want something really powerful, I mean, one of the drawbacks to a handheld device is that it doesn't have a ton of memory, although they're getting more. There's more and more memory. I think this thing has a micro SD card with 64 gigabytes on it, which is just mind-boggling when you think about it. And it's got a dual-core processor, 2 brains, which is always better than one, trust me. But that's still limited, right? And one of the things that I thought was interesting was, speaking of flexibility versus complexity, if you did put one hard drive in the car, you would not be able to necessarily build it.
Well, it's really interesting too, is because we did have a hard drive in our prior version of navigation, and you could load up, you could take CDs and copy those CDs onto the hard drive, and then you'd have access to up to 2,400 songs. When you think about it, though, is you have to feed in those CDs one at a time into your vehicle, right, to record. Well, today, with people with 10,000 songs in their library and access to 10 million songs and so on, is that what they really want to do? Be loading up a hard drive in their vehicle, which supports a brought-in device, bringing in something with a hard drive. But even as we see what's going on in recent announcements with Apple and the cloud, do you really need to bring anything into the vehicle other than something that authenticates you, gives you permission to access the content that you want. And so it's really exciting to see where things are going in terms of what they're calling cloud services. So all that music exists on a computer somewhere, and all you need as a user is permission to access it.
And the permission, by the way, probably comes from this, which is your mobile device. So speaking of permission, if you're going to ask permission of anything, or anybody, or any cloud, you're going to have to go through Bridget.
Only in your car.
Yeah, only in the car. Well, I don't know. It's kind of neat. So, but seriously, let me ask you a little bit about active sort of involvement of the customer with the technology. It's now at the level of voice. Tell me about that.
So voice control is a user interface that we've been using in Ford vehicles for quite a long time, but it's really become more and more useful. You know, we used to have voice control in our navigation systems. You could zoom in on the map. As systems evolved, you could enter addresses. That was really useful. And as we delivered a hard drive, you know, you could access the music on the hard drive in the car using your voice. But again, you know, these days people carry all kinds of content with them on their phones or their iPods, on their MP3 players. And that's a huge database of information that you're carrying around with you. Either it's your music player, which is limited to just music, maybe it's podcasts and videos too. But on your phone, you know, you could have all kinds of names, you could have, you know, apps now.
Contacts.
So, yeah, names in your contact book, your phone book. So voice as a user interface, we think, is the right direction for being able to easily find, mine through the large sets of data that you're carrying into the car with you.
It's interesting you say that because it harkened back to the hard drive question, which is the biggest hard drive that you bring into the car is this one. I'm pointing to my head. Now I know that's a subjective statement, okay, but I think my hard drive is fantastic. But the fact is it is a truly quick-moving hard drive. It's got lots of information stored. To your point, Bridget, if you know that you have Jim's name in your contact list, but you don't recall exactly how to get through the menu list to get to it, now you can do what?
Right, so with the voice user interface, you don't even have to figure out, you know, where do I go to find that? You do have to push the button. You push the button and you just ask for what you want.
Okay.
You know, you don't have to find the right button on the instrument panel or on the 8-inch touchscreen.
Now this leads us to voice, especially, and what you just said, not having to find something leads us to a very important part of this discussion, which is safety and your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the road. If you're looking for something, to use the vernacular, you might be actually literally looking for something, right? Tell me about that, Julius, if you could. I mean, what you're not looking for if you're, for example, like trying to get a song.
Yeah, absolutely. So how many of you have like an MP3 player or store like songs on your smartphone? Is it? That's pretty much almost everyone in this room. So and if you, and I'll take an iDevice for an example. You either have the touch and you scroll through, as Paul was saying, through a list of 10,000 songs, or you have an older iPod like me and you go through the click wheel, right? And now imagine doing that while you're driving, right? And that's something that we never want, but you still want access to your music inside of the vehicle. So now you can use your voice to access those songs. You can simply play. You can say inside of the vehicle, you know, play artist Dave Matthews Band, or play track Dark Side of the Moon, and you're suddenly able to keep your hands on the wheel, and you don't have to search through your entire alphabetized list of music or albums or songs inside of the car. And we've recently taken a step further. Is now, I'm guessing most everyone has heard of Pandora, internet radio, but now what we can do, if you have Pandora installed on your smartphone, when you bring that smartphone into your car, you suddenly have access to your free Pandora stations. And you can command and control that device and do all the great things you do with Pandora, thumbs up, thumbs down, bookmarking songs, all with your voice and with the steering wheel controls. You never have to take your hands off the wheel.
Now I'm going to use a 4-letter word. It's called iDrive. Sorry. That's a BMW system that came out and almost instantly got the nickname the iCrash. And the reason was it was based on a menu system. It was actually making the idea was elegant. The execution wasn't. Namely, you had a little button that, and sort of I guess it was what would you call it? A toggle? Rotary. A rotary. There you go. Yeah. And you would look for things in the system with your hand. Now there was a screen to give you some reference, but it was menu-driven, meaning hierarchical in particular, which is you'd start here, then you go to here, then you go to here. Well, there, among other things, I'd rather not be searching through menus while driving 65 miles an hour, which is the speed limit in some areas in the United States, on the road. It's just not. The voice is a much more direct way to get there. from an electronics standpoint, is that a challenge, or, and tell me what you had to do?
Well, I mean, I think, from an engineering, from a technology point of view, it's an opportunity to find technologies that can enable the right experience. And I just want to add to that, there's work that we've done, research internal to Ford as well as external to Ford, that really focuses on distraction, and the research that was collected suggests that keeping your eyes on the road with short glances away from the road is what we want to focus on to reduce distraction. All right, there's a lot of discussion on cognitive and what you're thinking about while you're driving and all that kind of stuff, but it's really about keeping your eyes on the road. And you do have to have occasional glances away to see what the speed is, or check something out, but keep those very short. And so voice, in the combination of the buttons that we have and so on, gives you an opportunity to focus on the road, take quick glances away if you need to, and back within 2 seconds, back focused on the road. And so using voice in the combination of the human-machine interface that we create for that allows that focus on the road.
I want to talk about voice and accents for a second, Bridget. There are, I talked to the folks at Nuance on a separate subject, and I think they said 32 different accents in the United States. Is that about right, 31, 32?
That's a good representation.
Okay, so 32 different accents. How much did you have to take that into consideration when you were creating the system that would listen to the customer?
So that's the benefit of working with our technology partner, Nuance Communications. We license their voice recognition and speech technologies, and their core voice recognition engine already accounts for those major dialects and accents across all languages, actually. In North American English, it happens to be 32, I believe.
Okay.
I think you're right. It's in that number.
It's an amazing moment. Let's just all take it. He was right.
So,
okay, yes.
So the core recognition technology already takes into account those things. Now, of course, you can't really bin everyone into a finite number of dialects. People have unique ways of speaking. So another benefit of partnering with Nuance, the provider of the voice recognition engine, is that they provide a feature called speaker adaptation. This is a feature that has been around for years. You might have seen it in your cell phone, where you can, certainly if you have Dragon dictation, I believe there's a way that you can, and Android also has a way to do this, where you can have the system train itself. You can say, yeah, save my profile and create a custom language model for me. So the engine that we use does this automatically in the background. You don't have to do anything at all. You just speak to the system in My Ford Touch, and it's automatically listening, and it detects that this is you, and that every time you say something, it's keeping track of how you pronounce those things, and it's automatically adjusting itself to recognize you better next time. And this happens, every time a new person comes in the car, it'll train themselves for that person too. When you come back in the car, it will still have that trained model of your voice available, and it'll switch back and use it as soon as it detects that you're back in the car. So that's great technology for people that don't speak with one of those major dialects in any language. You can set the system to this works.
Like people from Texas, for example.
Yeah, we certainly didn't include them.
No, that's the 33rd and unused.
I'm Canadian, and that's not included.
She's Canadian. They don't understand her at all. In a second, if there are a couple of questions, I'll be happy. Of course, we'd be happy to entertain them. I want to just get back to one bigger issue, back to sort of what we started about with the open system. What Jim and Julius and Bridget have all built, in essence, is a way for the car to be open not only to the technologies that come into it, but also to the people who come into it. And any customer, and this is my opinion, okay, it's sort of subjective though it may be, any person who comes in has individual wants and needs. And therefore, their entry point into the various technologies is going to be different. The reason, remember, that this beautiful, elegant, powerful, closed system worked quite well, that is the Apple I'm holding up, is because the interface was elegant. Not necessarily because that it had the ability to customize itself. It doesn't. This is an Android-powered phone, the competing operating system, and Google made it and invented it, but it's open. It's literally, you can download I think it's 14 million lines of code. You can go online right now. I forget the name of the URL, but you can go online right now, download the code, and start developing software if you want, or apps. Fine. But that means it can be adapted to your needs. You can trade out a keyboard. If you don't like the keyboard that came with the phone, get a new one. Try trading out the keyboard on this thing. Well, it's now become sort of possible, but it's been grudgingly done by Apple. So the question is, how important is customizing the experience with your technology? How important is that to your customers?
Well, you know, first of all, when we came up with Sync and talked about moving forward on Sync, it was about giving customers choices. It was about being open to the different devices, allowing you to select. We weren't going to force you to have a specific carrier, AT&T or Verizon or whatever. We knew, you know, appealing to our customer base in Ford, that we'd have a lot of diversity. We'd have people that wanted simple phones to people that wanted more complex phones. We're incentivized. We're all incentivized. My daughters remind me all the time that they want to check online to see when that new rebate's coming so they can upgrade their phone. So we're incentivized to change our phones. So we wanted to make sure that we made a system that could adapt to and give you the choices, both for carrier phones and so on. So that it was what was really important to us. And to do that, working with our partner Microsoft on it, we had to create a system that could adapt as well too. So that idea of a platform that's upgradable as new phones come out. If there are changes that we need to make, we can upgrade the software to it. You know, that is something that's pretty normal in the consumer electronics business. And again, as Julius pointed out earlier, to be fast, like consumer electronics, you have to have a platform that can evolve.
Yeah. And so just to add to what Jim, you were saying is, and I'll talk about this in a minute with some slides, is we have 3 pillars to our app ecosystem, and Paul mentioned kind of biology, and really what Ford has is an ecosystem. We have our built-in pieces or built-in applications, and we also have brought-in applications, which are things that you bring in on your smartphone. Those are applications like, you know, Pandora or Stitcher. And we also have another piece which goes into even deeper personalization, and those are some of our beamed-in services. And those use any type of cell phone with a Bluetooth connection. And with our Sync services, kind of a cloud-based network, we're actually able to deliver to drivers a personalized information, things like stock quotes, weather, traffic reports using your location and the destination where you want to go. And we can also download turn-by-turn directions into your vehicle. And the amazing thing is about the Sync services, our cloud-based feature, is it's free for the first 3 years of the vehicle. So there's no subscription fees. It comes with your vehicle for the first 3 years. If you lease your car, you're probably giving the car back before your free subscription is up. So it's and it's totally personalizable. I don't even know what word that is.
I think that was
It's not a word.
Personalized. You can personalize it.
Personalized.
I wanted to add to what you were saying though, because I think what some people don't understand is that this is technology that can be had today. It's been in the market since 2007 in Ford vehicles, and you can get it in the Fiesta. You can get it in, you know, you can get it in vehicles across the whole Ford, you know, Lincoln Mercury family. It's not meant for luxury consumers only. And this, you know, having TDI free for 3 years doesn't cost you anything.
And it's back to the idea commented about is we're dedicated to democratization of technology. We launched Sync on the Focus vehicle, right? And we expanded it rapidly across all the vehicle lines. It's not deemed a luxury feature. It's a feature that adds value that everybody can take advantage of, so we need to give access to everyone.
So I'm going to bring up the boogeyman in all of this, the sort of scary fact for all of us who've ever interacted with any technology, is that, and I'm going to pose a slight challenge to you guys, which is that, look, the expectation of the average consumer when they got into a Ford vehicle for the last, whatever, 100 years or so, has been, well, this thing's going to work. And it's going to work well, and I know what this round thing does, and I know what the thing over here does, and I don't really have to learn any of that. But the expectation when you pick up one of these is not necessarily the same. In fact, many times it's the opposite. When you pick up one of these, sometimes you expect to be a little frustrated, maybe, or at least a little confused at first, and you have to learn a lot to maximize the power potential in this thing. How much of a challenge is it for you guys to deal with now a totally separate set of expectations? And what are you doing about it?
Well, you know, for example, when we were in the design phases of my Ford Touch, we did a lot of research, asking people and so on, and trying to find ways that they could learn things quickly. And in a lot of cases, it comes down to very simple cues. For example, where we position things. We use buttons on the steering wheel, and they're coordinated with the displays, so they kind of match the displays. We use colors, so we organize information by categories: entertainment information, phone information, navigation, climate control information, and we assign those a color. So whenever you see blue, it's climate control. Whenever you see yellow, it's phone. And then we also, on the touchscreen display, organize those four corners, those four pieces of information, or four categories of information in the corners using those colors. So trying to get those cues so that you can learn very quickly, and you can learn to do the simple things very quickly, and then as you get comfortable with it, you can dig deeper and deeper into services, things that you want to do.
So, yeah, on the voice side, it's also user interface, right? But I'd say the challenge that we have is that we do studies to determine where the right placement is for the different features in the buttons and the touch screens, etc. But with voice, one of the challenges we see is that you go and do user studies and people say things differently to their car every day. You might say, you know, call Mark. You know, my boss's name is Mark. Call Mark today, but tomorrow I'll get in the car, even though I use it 100 times, I'll be like, I want to call Mark. The system, it's really hard for the system to predict how you're going to ask for something. That's my challenge. With voice, I never know what people are going to say to the system. With a touch screen, people always have to go to the same button, and I can predict that if they want to make a phone call, you know, they have to go to the touch screen, push this button, and that's going to lead them to the right place where they can see their phone book and they can pick who they want to call. That's really easy. You design it once, it's there, it's the same experience every time. With voice, you never know what the customer is going to say, so it's my biggest challenge. It's understanding how to anticipate what people are going to say, what they want to do, and how to make the best experience for them. Today in my presentation, you'll see that we're moving from a very structured command set. So today we have 10,000 commands in my Ford Touch. The original version of Sync had 100. We've added a lot of features, therefore necessitating more commands. But we've also added a lot of aliases to that so that you can have various ways of saying things. So to enter an address, you don't have to say destination street address. Today you can just say find an address. Say either way. But in the future we'll be moving to understanding what drivers want without recognizing just structured commands. So you can say, you know, I need to make a phone call, or I want to call Mark. You don't just have to say call Mark.
So I will leave you with this idea, and it's actually all three of these guys were involved directly in the greatest pleasure I take in this system, and I had to. Pandora, as you know, the music system, the music app that allows you to access to, I think, is now 800,000 songs, something like that, maybe more, hundreds of thousands of songs. The app that sits on this phone actually is improved when it gets into the car. The reason? Because of all these guys. Namely, you can now, unlike with the phone, I can't speak to my phone and tell it thumbs up or thumbs down to the song I just heard. I can't say fast forward next or whatever the next song. I can't use any voice commands with my phone and this app. But when this same app on this phone goes into the vehicle, I am now able to interact with that app using my voice. It wasn't possible on this device. It is when it gets inside my Ford Touch or my Touch system. So with that, I'm going to invite you guys to talk to these folks after, and they're going to present something in a couple of minutes. I'm going to ask Alan if you could come on up and introduce the next section. So thanks you guys very much.
This is Geekazine's special coverage of Ford, Forward with Ford, Futuring and Trend Conference in Dearborn, Michigan. Geekazine is a proud member of the Tech Podcast Network over at techpodcast.com. If it's tech, then it's here.